My granddaughter hasn't spoken a word in 3 weeks. Not to her teachers, not to her friends, not even to me. But last night, while my daughter-in-law was on the phone downstairs, Chloe grabbed my wrist, pulled me into the hallway closet, and pressed a folded piece of notebook paper into my hand. "Grandpa, look behind the water heater in the basement. There's a loose panel. Pull it open. You need to see what she's been hiding." Her eyes were wide, terrified, and her little hands were trembling. So I waited until 2 in the morning, when the whole house was silent, and I went down those basement stairs with nothing but a flashlight and a sick feeling in my stomach. When I pulled that panel open and saw what was behind it, I had to sit down on the cold concrete floor because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. But I need to go back to the beginning, because this story doesn't start in a basement. It starts 8 months ago, on a Tuesday afternoon in September, when my wife of 41 years collapsed in the garden she loved more than anything. Dorothy and I had built our life in Billings, Montana, bought a little ranch-style house in 1986 when I was still working at the power plant, raised 2 kids there. Our son, James, stayed local, became an electrician, married a woman named Valerie, and they had Chloe, who was 11 when all of this happened. Our daughter, Patricia, moved to Seattle after college and worked in hospital administration. Good kid, called every Sunday without fail. Dorothy had a stroke. 1 minute she was pruning her rose bushes, the next she was on the ground. The ambulance came in 7 minutes, but it wasn't fast enough. She passed at street. Vincent's that evening. I was holding her hand when the monitor flatlined. 41 years. And it ended with a long, steady beep in a room that smelled like disinfectant. At 66 years old, I was alone for the first time in my adult life. I didn't know how to cook more than eggs and toast. I didn't know where Dorothy kept the insurance papers. I didn't even know how to work the washing machine properly. The first week, I wore the same flannel shirt 3 days in a row because I couldn't figure out which cycle to use. James came over every day after work to check on me. He'd sit at the kitchen table, drink a beer, ask if I needed anything. He was a good son, quiet like his mother, solid, but he was stretched thin. Between his job, Chloe's school schedule, and everything else, he was running on fumes. Then, about 3 weeks after the funeral, Valerie showed up at my door with 2 suitcases and a plan. "Frank, we've been talking, and this arrangement of James running back and forth every day isn't sustainable." She walked past me into the living room before I'd even invited her in. "You're rattling around in this big house by yourself. You need help. So James and I decided we're going to move in, just until you're back on your feet. I appreciate the thought, Valerie. But I'm managing." "Are you?" She looked pointedly at the stack of dirty dishes in the sink, the pile of unopened mail on the counter, the overflowing trash can. "Frank, you haven't even opened your electricity bill. You're going to get your power shut off." She had a point. I hated admitting it, but she had a point. And the house was so quiet without Dorothy that some nights I'd turn the TV on just to hear another human voice. So they moved in, James, Valerie, and Chloe. The house had 3 bedrooms, so Chloe got the guest room and everyone had space. At first, it was fine. Chloe was a bright, chatty kid who loved drawing and asking me questions about what Montana was like when I was young. James fixed the leaky faucet in the bathroom that I'd been ignoring for 2 years. Even Valerie seemed helpful at first, doing the grocery shopping, keeping the house clean, handling the mail. But then things started to shift. It was subtle. Valerie began rearranging things. She moved Dorothy's china cabinet into the garage because it was taking up too much space in the dining room. She threw out Dorothy's recipe box, the one with handwritten cards going back to the 1970s, because it was cluttered and collecting dust. When I asked about it, she said she thought it was junk mail, a box of recipe cards. Junk mail. She started commenting on everything I did. "Frank, you already ate lunch. Don't you remember? I made you a sandwich 2 hours ago, but I didn't remember any sandwich. Frank, you left the back door unlocked again. Anyone could have walked in. I was certain I'd locked it. Frank, I found your wallet in the refrigerator this morning. Are you sure you're feeling all right?" I started doubting myself. Maybe I was losing it. Dorothy had always handled the details of our life, and without her, maybe my mind was slipping. I was 66, after all. "These things happen," James noticed. "Dad, Valerie told me you've been forgetting things. A lot of things." He looked uncomfortable, standing in the doorway of my bedroom one evening. "Maybe we should get you checked out, just to be safe." I'm fine, son. Just adjusting. She said you put a frying pan in the dishwasher with food still on it. She said you asked her the same question 4 times in one morning. I don't remember doing that. That's kind of the point, Dad. He wasn't being mean about it. He looked worried. But there was something behind the worry that bothered me. A kind of resignation, like he'd already decided I was broken and was just going through the motions of confirming it. Meanwhile, Chloe was changing. This kid who used to sit on my lap and draw pictures of horses and tell me about her day was becoming a shadow. She flinched whenever Valerie spoke to her. She stopped drawing. She stopped talking at dinner. When I asked her what was wrong, she'd just shake her head and look at Valerie, then look down at her plate. She's going through a phase, Valerie said with a wave of her hand when I brought it up. Preteen stuff. You wouldn't understand, Frank. It's a girl thing. But it wasn't a preteen phase. I knew that kid. I'd known her since the day she was born, and whatever was happening to her wasn't hormones or growing pains. She was scared. One evening, about 5 months in, I came downstairs for water around 11 o'clock. Chloe was sitting on the bottom step of the staircase, knees drawn up to her chest, her face wet with tears. Sweetheart, what's going on? She looked up at me, opened her mouth, then closed it. Her eyes darted toward the hallway leading to the master bedroom where James and Valerie slept. Nothing, Grandpa. Bad dream. You want to talk about it? I can't. Why not? She didn't answer. Just got up and went back to her room and closed the door so softly it barely clicked. And I stood there in the dark hallway knowing something was very wrong and feeling completely powerless to figure out what. The next week, Valerie started bringing me tea before bed. Chamomile, she said. It'll help you sleep. You've been tossing and turning. I can hear you through the wall. It was thoughtful. I appreciated it. And the tea did help me sleep. In fact, I slept so heavily that some mornings I felt groggy and confused, like I was swimming through fog. My memory, which had already been questionable, got worse. Whole chunks of time disappeared. I'd find myself sitting in the living room at 4 in the afternoon, with no recollection of anything that had happened since breakfast. He's getting worse, I heard Valerie say to James one night when they thought I was asleep. We need to start talking seriously about long-term care. There are places in Great Falls that handle this kind of thing. Memory care units. He's my father, Val. I'm not putting him in a home. James, be realistic. He can't take care of himself. He can barely remember what day it is. And we can't do this forever. This house is equity sitting here doing nothing. If we sold it and used the proceeds for his care, there'd be enough left over to finally get our own place. A real place, not a rental. I don't know, Val. Think about Chloe. Think about our future. Your father would want us to be taken care of. The conversation ended, but it planted a seed. I could feel it. James started looking at me differently, with pity and impatience mixed together. He stopped asking how I was doing and started asking Valerie how I was doing, as if I wasn't qualified to report on my own condition. Then came the night with the note. It was a Thursday. James was working late, a big rewiring job at a commercial property that had him pulling 12-hour shifts. Valerie had made dinner, chicken casserole, and we were eating quietly. Chloe picking at her food, me trying to remember if I'd taken my blood pressure pill that morning or not. Valerie got up to answer her phone. She stepped into the kitchen, her voice low and hushed. The moment she was out of sight, Chloe moved fast. She reached across the table and grabbed my wrist, pressing the folded paper into my palm with a precision that told me she'd been planning this for days. Her eyes locked onto mine. They were pleading, desperate, and fierce all at once. Then she let go, picked up her fork, and went back to pushing food around her plate, all in about 3 seconds. My heart was hammering. I closed my fingers around the paper and kept eating. Later, in my bedroom, with the door locked, I unfolded the note. Chloe's handwriting was careful, practiced, but the words were urgent. Grandpa, look behind the water heater in the basement. There's a loose panel in the wall. Pull it open. You need to see what she's been hiding. Please go when she's asleep. Don't tell her. I'm scared, Grandpa. I'm really scared. I read it 5 times. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. At 2 in the morning, I crept out of bed. The house was dark and still. I took the flashlight from the junk drawer in the kitchen and eased open the basement door, wincing at every creak. The stairs groaned under my weight, but I took them slowly, one at a time, pausing between each step to listen. The basement was half finished. James had talked about turning it into a rec room someday, but it was still just concrete and exposed ductwork and storage boxes. The water heater sat in the far corner, a big white tank humming quietly. Behind it, the wall was unfinished drywall. I ran my flashlight along the seam and saw it, a section about 2 feet wide where the drywall wasn't screwed in. It was just resting against the studs, held in place by the water heater itself. I pulled it away carefully. Behind it was a space between the outer wall and the foundation, about 18 inches deep, and shoved into that space was a black duffel bag. I pulled it out. It was heavy. I unzipped it on the basement floor, my flashlight propped on a storage bin. The first thing I found was a manila envelope full of bank documents, statements for an account I'd never opened, a joint account in my name and Valerie's. I squinted at the numbers. There were regular transfers from my savings account, $1,500 here, $2,000 there, going back 6 months. The balance was over $35,000. Money I didn't know was missing because I hadn't been clear-headed enough to check. Under the envelope was a folder of legal papers, a power of attorney giving Valerie full control over my financial and medical decisions, signed with what looked like my signature. But I never signed this. I would remember signing something this important. There was also a revised will, typed up all official-looking, that left the house and all my assets to James and Valerie, with nothing set aside for Patricia and nothing for Chloe's education fund that Dorothy and I had written into our real will. At the bottom of the bag were 2 prescription bottles. One was lorazepam, a high-dose benzodiazepine. The other was zolpidem, a powerful sleeping medication. Neither had my name on them. The labels had been peeled off, and the bottles were unmarked, but I could read the manufacturer codes on the pills themselves. The tea. The chamomile tea Valerie brought me every night. That's what was making me forget. That's what was turning me into the confused, helpless old man she needed me to be. I sat on that cold basement floor and felt something I hadn't felt since Dorothy died. Clarity. Total. Burning clarity. My daughter-in-law was poisoning me, stealing from me, forging documents, planning to ship me off to a memory care facility and sell my home out from under me. And Chloe had figured it out. My 11-year-old granddaughter had seen the truth that everyone else had missed. I heard a floorboard creak above me and froze. Footsteps, light ones, coming down the basement stairs. My heart seized. But then I heard a whisper. "Grandpa?" Chloe. She was in her pajamas, barefoot, hugging herself against the cold. "You found it?" she whispered. I nodded, not trusting my voice. She came down the rest of the stairs and sat beside me on the floor. In the flashlight's glow, she looked so small, so young to be carrying something this heavy. "How did you know about this?" I asked quietly. "I couldn't sleep one night, about 3 weeks ago. I heard her come down here. She didn't know I was awake. I watched her from the top of the stairs. She pulled that panel off and put something in the bag. The next day, when she was at the store and Dad was at work, I looked. Why didn't you tell your father?" Chloe's face crumpled. "Because I heard them talking, Grandpa. Dad knows. Not everything, maybe. But he knows she's taking your money. He knows about the account. She told him it was for the transition. That's what she calls it. The transition. Like putting you in a home is just the next step in some plan." My chest ached. James, my boy, the kid I taught to ride a bike, the kid who cried at his mother's funeral, he was part of this. "I tried to tell my teacher," Chloe continued, her voice cracking. "But she called my mom about it, and my mom told her I was acting out because of Grandma's death. After that, my mom told me if I ever said anything to anyone again, she'd make sure I got sent to a boarding school in Wyoming. She said I'd never see you again. That's why she stopped talking. That's why she'd gone silent. Not a phase, not preteen moodiness. She'd been silenced." I put my arm around her. She leaned into me, shaking. "Listen to me, sweetheart. You did the right thing. You're brave, braver than anyone I know, and I'm going to fix this. But we have to be smart. We're going to put everything back exactly where it was, and tomorrow I'm going to make some phone calls. Can you trust me?" She nodded. "I trust you, Grandpa." We repacked the duffel bag, replaced the panel, and crept back upstairs. Before she went to her room, Chloe turned and hugged me, fierce and tight, the way Dorothy used to. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through my options. By sunrise, I had a plan. The first thing I did the next morning was pour Valerie's chamomile tea down the bathroom drain while the shower was running. I pocketed the blood pressure pills she'd set out on my nightstand instead of swallowing them. I didn't know if she was tampering with those, too, and I wasn't taking any chances. Then I went downstairs, made my own coffee, scrambled my own eggs, and sat down at the kitchen table feeling sharper than I had in months. Valerie eyed me from the doorway. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep. Figured I'd make breakfast for once." "That's sweet, Frank. But you should let me handle the cooking. Remember last time you used the stove? You left a burner on. I'll be careful." After she left to drive Chloe to school, I called my lawyer, Ed Browning. Ed and I went back 30 years. He'd handled the house purchase, our estate planning, Dorothy's life insurance paperwork. I told him I needed to see him urgently and asked if he could fit me in that morning. "Frank, you sound rattled. Everything okay?" "Not even close, Ed. I'll explain when I get there." Then I called my doctor, Dr. Nguyen, who'd been my physician for 15 years. I told the receptionist I needed blood work done today and a full cognitive evaluation as soon as possible. She must have heard something in my voice because she fit me in for 1 o'clock. I got in my truck and drove to Ed's office first. He was waiting for me with a cup of coffee and a concerned expression. I sat across from his desk and told him everything. I showed him the photos I'd taken in the basement. Every document, every pill bottle, every bank statement I'd photographed on my phone while Chloe kept watch. Ed's face went from concerned to furious in about 30 seconds. "Frank, this is criminal. We're talking forgery, fraud, theft, elder abuse, and possibly attempted poisoning. That power of attorney is fraudulent. Your actual POA names James and Patricia as co-agents, and it's only activated by a physician's certification of incapacity. This revised will is worthless. Your real will is on file with the court. Can they really have me declared incompetent? Not legitimately. It requires independent medical evaluation, a court proceeding, legal representation for you. But these forged documents? Someone could walk into a bank with that fake POA and start moving money around. In fact, it looks like that's exactly what's happened. What do I do, Ed?" He leaned forward. "Step 1, get yourself medically cleared. That destroys any competency argument. Step 2, we freeze your accounts and flag the fraud with the bank. Step 3, we go to the police. And Step 4, we protect Chloe. Chloe's my priority. Valerie threatened to send her to boarding school if she talked. The kid's terrified. We'll address that. If there's evidence of intimidation of a minor, that's an additional charge. Can you get the physical documents, not just photos?" "I can. Tonight." "Do it. Bring them to me first thing tomorrow." From Ed's office, I drove to Dr. Nguyen's clinic. I handed over the pill bottles and told him what I believed was happening. He studied the labels, his expression grim. Lorazepam and zolpidem together, especially in the doses suggested by these bottles, would cause significant memory impairment, confusion, drowsiness, and disorientation. Over several months, it would absolutely mimic cognitive decline. "Frank, this is poisoning. Can you prove it's in my system? We'll draw blood right now. I'm ordering a comprehensive toxicology panel. Results will take about 72 hours from the lab. In the meantime, I want to run a full cognitive assessment." The assessment took 2 hours. Memory tests, reasoning exercises, word recall, spatial awareness, everything. When it was done, Dr. Nguyen sat down with me and shook my head. "Frank, your cognitive function is excellent. Sharp as a tack. There's zero indication of dementia or any neurodegenerative condition. Whatever's been causing your memory issues, it's not organic, it's chemical. I'd stake my license on it." "You'll put that in writing?" "Absolutely. I'll have a formal competency report ready by end of day." I drove home feeling like a new man, clear-headed, angry, and ready. That evening, I played my part. I sat at dinner, let Valerie serve my plate, smiled when she asked about my day. I told her I'd gone to the hardware store and the pharmacy. She seemed satisfied. When she brought me tea before bed, I thanked her and carried it to my room. Then I poured it down the sink. At 1 in the morning, Chloe and I went back to the basement. We retrieved the entire duffel bag. In my bedroom, I photographed everything again, higher quality this time. Every page of every document. Then I did something that might have been reckless but felt necessary. I took the originals. All of them. I replaced the duffel bag with one of similar weight, stuffed with old newspapers and junk from the garage, and put the panel back. If Valerie checked, She'd feel the weight and maybe not look inside. It was a gamble, but I needed those originals. Early the next morning, before anyone was awake, I drove to Ed's office and dropped off everything. He locked it in his safe and called his contact at the Yellowstone County Sheriff's Office. By noon, I was sitting in an interview room with Detective Mike Reeves, a stocky man with a no-nonsense face and a yellow legal pad. He listened. He looked at the documents. He called the bank and confirmed the unauthorized account and transfers. He called Dr. Nguyen and got a preliminary verbal confirmation that my blood work showed elevated benzodiazepine levels. Mr. Sullivan, your daughter-in-law has committed multiple felonies. Your son may be culpable as well, depending on his level of involvement. We can move on this quickly, but I need a day to coordinate with the prosecutor and get warrants. What about my granddaughter? She's the one who uncovered all of this. She's 11 years old, and she's been living in fear for weeks. We'll make sure she's safe. Do you have family she can stay with during the arrest? My daughter Patricia, in Seattle. She'll take Chloe in a heartbeat. Good. Here's what I need from you. Go home, act normal. Don't give any indication that anything has changed. Can you do that for 24 more hours? I've been doing it for 2 days already. One more won't break me, but it nearly did. That last evening was the hardest thing I've ever done. Sitting across from Valerie at dinner, watching her smile, watching her pour me a glass of iced tea with that same helpful expression she always wore. Watching James come home from work and kiss her on the cheek, completely ordinary, completely domestic, as if they weren't conspiring to rob his own father of everything. Chloe sat next to me, quiet as always, but I caught her eye and gave her the smallest nod. She understood. It was almost over. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my chair by the window and watched the street, waiting for morning. At 6 a.m., I woke Chloe quietly, helped her pack a bag, and told her we were going on a little trip. She didn't ask questions. She just grabbed her sketchbook, the one she hadn't opened in weeks, and followed me out to the truck. We were 40 miles outside of Billings, heading west on I-90, when Detective Reeves called. Mr. Sullivan, warrants have been executed. Valerie was arrested at the residence. James was picked up at his job site. Both are in custody. We've secured the basement and all remaining evidence. I pulled over onto the shoulder. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. What are the charges? Fraud, forgery, theft over $10,000, elder abuse, conspiracy, and administering a noxious substance. The prosecutor is reviewing the toxicology results with regard to a potential poisoning charge. We also documented the threats made to your granddaughter. That's witness intimidation of a minor. Chloe was watching me from the passenger seat. Is it over, Grandpa? It's over, sweetheart. She burst into tears. Not scared tears, not sad tears. Relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. She cried like a dam breaking, and I put my arm around her and let her, because she'd earned every one of those tears. I called Patricia from a rest stop near Bozeman. I hadn't told her anything yet. I'd wanted to protect her from the worry until I had something concrete to tell. Dad, what's going on? Are you okay? I told her everything. The silence on the other end of the line got heavier with each sentence. That witch, Patricia said quietly when I finished. That absolute witch. And James went along with it? He did. I'm booking a flight to Billings tonight. Chloe's coming to stay with me until this is sorted out. That's what I was hoping you'd say. The aftermath stretched out over months. Court dates, depositions, bank investigations, family services, interviews. It was exhausting and painful in ways I can't fully describe, because every legal proceeding meant sitting in a room and hearing, in clinical detail, exactly how my son and his wife had planned to erase me. The toxicology report confirmed significant levels of lorazepam and zolpidem in my system, consistent with chronic ingestion over several months. Doctor, Nguyen's cognitive assessment proved I was completely sound of mind. The bank confirmed over $38,000 in unauthorized transfers. Valerie hired a defense attorney who tried to argue she was acting out of concern for my well-being. That fell apart when they presented the forged documents, the hidden bank account, and the testimony from Chloe about the threats. James took a plea deal. He admitted to knowing about the financial fraud and the plan to pursue guardianship, though he claimed he didn't know about the drugging. Whether that's true, I'll never know. Part of me wants to believe he didn't know. Part of me thinks it doesn't matter, because he knew enough and did nothing. Valerie was sentenced to 5 years for fraud, forgery, theft, elder abuse, and administering a noxious substance. James got 2.5 years with the plea deal. Chloe went to live with Patricia in Seattle. It was hard, being that far from her, but Patricia gave her stability and safety. Chloe started talking again within weeks of being away from Valerie. She started drawing again, too. She sent me a sketch in the mail about a month after she moved. It was a picture of me and her sitting on the front porch, and at the bottom she'd written, "The Brave Ones," by Chloe Sullivan. I had it framed. It hangs in the hallway next to Dorothy's wedding portrait. These days, life is quiet in the way I need it to be. I tend Dorothy's rose garden, the one Valerie wanted to rip out. I go to my doctor for regular checkups, and my mind is as clear as it's ever been. I keep my important documents in a safe deposit box at the bank now, and I make my own meals, pour my own drinks, and take my own medication from bottles I buy and open myself. Patricia flies out with Chloe every holiday. Last Thanksgiving, Chloe told me she wants to be a social worker when she grows up. She said she wants to help kids who are in situations where the adults around them aren't doing the right thing. "Like you helped me, Grandpa," she said. "Sweetheart, you helped me. You're the one who figured it out. You're the one who found the courage to pass me that note when you could have stayed quiet. I was so scared." Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are. She smiled at that. First real smile I'd seen from her in a long time. "I don't talk to James. He's written me letters from prison. I've read them. They're full of apologies and explanations and promises to be better. Maybe someday I'll respond, maybe not. Forgiveness is a process, and some wounds take longer to heal than others. What I know is that he chose his wife's greed over his father's safety, and that's something I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. But I also know this. I'm still here. I'm still standing in the house Dorothy and I built together. I'm still making my own decisions, living my own life, sleeping in my own bed. Nobody took that from me, because an 11-year-old girl with a sketchbook and a backbone made of steel refused to let them. If you're listening to this, and you know an older person who seems to be changing, who seems confused or withdrawn, who seems to be slipping away, please don't just accept it. Ask questions. Look closer. Not all confusion is dementia. Not all forgetfulness is age. Sometimes the people who are supposed to be helping are the ones doing the harm. And if you're an older person going through something like what I went through, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not crazy. You are not too old to matter. You are not imagining things. Trust yourself. Reach out to someone you believe in. A lawyer, a doctor, a friend, anyone outside the situation. Document what you can. Fight for yourself, because you are worth fighting for. And if you're a young person, a kid, a teenager, anyone who sees something wrong happening to someone you love, please don't stay silent. I know it's terrifying. I know the adults in your life might not listen, or worse, might punish you for speaking up. But your voice matters more than you know. Chloe saved my life with a folded piece of notebook paper and the courage to hand it to me. You might save someone's life, too. The house is quiet tonight. Good quiet. I'm sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee I made myself, watching the sun go down over the rim rocks. Dorothy's roses are blooming. Chloe's drawing is on the wall. And I'm free. Clear-headed, independent, and free. That's not a small thing. That's everything. Stay sharp. Stay aware. Take care of the people who take care of you. And never, ever ignore that voice in your gut that tells you something isn't right. That voice exists for a reason. Listen to it. It might just save your life.